Ever feel like team workshops? They're kind of a toss-up. Some days they're amazing, bursting with ideas, and then other days, well, you'd rather be doing just about anything else.
Yeah, I get it. It's like the difference between, say, a perfectly cooked meal and a bowl of stale cereal.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, figuring out how to make those workshops really work. We've got some seriously good tips from Culinary Tides, Inc. They're experts at designing great experiences, especially in the food and beverage world.
What I found really interesting about their approach is the focus on strategy. Like, they really emphasize treating workshops as valuable tools and not just something you do to fill the time.
Okay, I'm all in. What's the strategy?
Well, they break it down into two parts. First, there's internal and external prep. That's all the stuff your team needs to figure out before even thinking about a facilitator.
So, like, laying the groundwork.
Exactly. And they start with a budget. It may seem kind of basic, but trust me, it's crucial.
Oh, yeah, we forgot about that moment when it comes to budget can be rough.
For sure. Like, imagine spending a ton on this fancy offsite location, but then having to skimp on things like coffee and snacks for everyone.
Ouch. Yeah, no one's going to feel very creative with an empty stomach.
Right. Culinary Tides emphasizes prioritizing, like figuring out what's absolutely essential for your specific workshop. If you're all about brainstorming, maybe focus on great food to keep the energy up.
Makes sense. So align your spending with what you want to get out of it. Love it. Okay, so we've got the budget. What's next?
So this is where it gets super interesting. They're big on defining really, really clear goals. Like, what's the purpose of even having this gathering?
Right, because if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there?
Exactly.
Hmm.
And when everyone's on the same page from the beginning, I mean, everyone, the organizers, the people participating, even the facilitator, it's much easier to get those light bulb moments.
And when we talk about those light bulb moments, Culinary Tides doesn't want us to just stop the feeling of a good session. They want us to know if the workshop really made a difference, if it moved the needle.
Yeah, it's not enough to just feel productive, right?
Yeah.
You need some concrete proof.
Okay, so how do we measure something like brainstorming? How do we put numbers to teamwork?
Well, that's where KPIs come in, key performance indicators. But, and this is important, Culinary Tide says we can't just use any old metric.
Oh, so it's going to be strategic, connected to the goals we talked about.
Exactly. If the goal is to get new ideas for a product, our KPI can't be how many sticky notes we used. It's got to be something like how many actually realistic product concepts came out of it.
Got it. So cut through the fluff, get to the metrics that actually show progress.
And here's a great tip from Culinary Tides. I love this. Get everyone on the same page about those KPIs before the workshop.
Oh, smart. No surprises later. Everyone knows what the goals are from the start.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now let's talk about actually finding the right facilitator. Culinary Tides really stresses that this isn't a one-size-fits-all situation.
It's got to be the right fit for the team, right?
Yeah. They give you all these questions to ask to make sure it's a good match. Things like, what's their experience? How do they handle making it specific to our needs? They even say, ask about whether they do research beforehand.
Wow, so they actually come prepared.
Right. A really great facilitator. They're invested in your success. They're not just there to run through a script. They show up with specific insights for your industry, your challenges.
That's huge. Okay, now, Culinary Tides also talks about the structure of the workshop, and I feel like that often gets overlooked.
For sure. People assume everyone learns the same way, but that's not true.
Yeah.
Culinary Tides is big on making sure the format actually matches, your goals and how your team learns best.
So are we talking about interactive stuff or more traditional presentations?
It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Although they do warn against death by PowerPoint, those workshops where everyone's struggling to stay awake.
Oh, I've been there. Those are brutal.
Totally. Culinary Tides is all about keeping people engaged and energized. So think interactive exercises, group discussions, maybe even some hands-on activities, all tailored to what you're trying to achieve.
So it's all about keeping things fresh and making sure people don't completely tune out, which makes total sense. But let's talk about what happens after the workshop, right? We've all been there. You leave a session feeling super inspired, but then nothing. All those ideas just disappear. So how do we prevent that?
You've hit on something really important. Culinary Tides is big on making sure a workshop isn't just this one-time thing. They talk about how crucial it is to actually turn those aha moments, those ideas, into action.
So it's bridging the gap, right? Taking it from brainstorming to actually doing something.
Exactly. And they have some really practical tips for doing that. Like, one of the biggest takeaways is about assigning clear ownership to those action steps. Don't just let those ideas float around.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, we had this amazing brainstorming session, came up with a game-changing idea, but then, like, who's actually going to make it happen? Who's in charge of that?
Exactly. And they're very clear about pairing ownership with resources and deadlines. Like, what do we need to actually do this? And when does it need to be done?
So turning those ideas into to-do list items, basically.
Totally. And they take it even further. They suggest scheduling regular check-ins and, having people report on their progress. That way you keep the momentum going.
So it's not just a one and done. It's like the workshop starts the fire, but then you have to actually keep it going.
Yes. And that's what sets apart the companies who get workshops. The ones who really make them work. They build that spirit of innovation into how they do things.
That's huge. But I have to ask, what about those times when, even when you try everything, the workshop just like flops?
It happens. But Culinary Tides reminds us that even a workshop that doesn't go perfectly, it can still teach us something.
Oh, I like that. So it's not a failure. It's just like data, what worked, what didn't.
Right. Each workshop, good or bad, gives you information. And one thing that can really make or break a workshop is having the right mix of people in the room.
Oh, yeah. Culinary Tides mentions that too. Having different perspectives is key.
Definitely. It's when you get different backgrounds and experiences together, that's when the really interesting stuff happens. You want people with different skills, different levels of experience.
That makes it easier for everyone to feel like they can contribute.
Exactly. And when you have that, that's when the magic really happens.
This has been an awesome deep dive. So much great stuff from Culinary Tides. As we wrap up here, what's like the biggest takeaway you hope our listeners, walk away with?
I'd say don't underestimate workshops. When you plan them out, they're a powerful tool for your team, for your whole company.
So next time you see that workshop invite, don't panic.
Yeah.
Think about what you can learn and how you can contribute, make it a success.
Yes, exactly.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another deep dive. Until then, happy workshopping.